And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to D.G. Will's Books in La Jolla, California. Tonight we're delighted to have Stephen Michael Shearer here again to discuss his new book, Beautiful, the Life of Hedy Lamarr. Stephen is also the author of the critically acclaimed Patricia Neal, An Unquiet Life. He brought Ms. Neal here a few years ago, and it was a wonderful event, which was videotaped and which you can see on YouTube, our YouTube channel. Stephen has also written for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the Film Collectors Registry, and has contributed research to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. He is as well a former model and actor, having appeared on stage, television, and film. His new book, Beautiful, is an in-depth and surprising biography of the most beautiful girl in the world. Was it Max Reinhardt or Otto Preminger?
Max Reinhardt.
Max Reinhardt, yeah, Max Reinhardt's phrase. Most beautiful girl in the world, who also became responsible for one of the 20th century's most important inventions. But I'll let Stephen tell you about that. Hedy Lamarr's exotic beauty was heralded across Europe, but she became infamous for her nude scenes in the scandalous Czech film Ecstasy. Although she became literally trapped in a marriage to Austria's munitions baron at the beginning of World War II, Lamarr fled Europe for Hollywood, where she became one of its most glamorous stars, appearing opposite actors such as Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, and James Stewart, her favorite actor, I believe. Beautiful separates the truth from the rumors about Lamarr's life and highlights her astonishing role as inventor of a technology that has become an essential part of everything from military weaponry to cell phones, including Qualcomm here in San Diego. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Michael Shearer.
Thank you. And I want to thank you very much for being here tonight. As Dennis said, this is actually the third time I've been here. First time was when Patricia Neal, the book came out in 2006, and then 3 years ago this month, we had just Patricia had just finished filming a movie in San Diego called Flying By with Billy Ray Cyrus and Heather Locklear, and I was fortunate to have a small role in that. And we came here the night we finished filming, and she was exhausted, but she came out like a super trooper. There's a picture of her right over here, as a matter of fact. And I was wearing black that night too, but I appreciate Dennis for inviting me back, and this is, of course, a wonderful place to talk about my books, to talk about books. I think it was the first time I was here that I mentioned the fact that when Jacqueline Onassis passed away, I was living in New York at that time, and I remember distinctly on television John Kennedy Jr. coming out and addressing the press and telling them that my mother passed away exactly the way she wanted to, surrounded by family and friends and books. So I just want you to know that I've kind of already confirmed it with Dennis. When my time comes to leave this world, I'm going to be laid out right there. But not really, but books are very, very important. And before I really start talking about Hedy Lamarr, I do want to talk a little bit about why I do what I do. I am first and foremost a biographer, which makes me a historian. I'm an actor as well. And the reason for that is because undeniably, perhaps the one true art form that America has contributed to the world has been motion picture. And motion picture has created our society, created who we are. My great-grandparents went to motion pictures and what were they called, peep shows and motion pictures to see things move and to be educated about what went on in other cities of the world. And then my grandparents in the silent era, they watched films to see how people dressed and how society lived and to be excited about drama and historical events. When the talkies came in, my parents, who were children of the Depression, they learned through listening and through viewing how to behave, how to interact with each other. And motion pictures truly created our society. It created who we are and how we behave. And as we know, so many of these stars and great stars of Hollywood's golden eras, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, even into the 50s for a brief time, they are leaving us very quickly. My dear friend Patricia Neal was someone I knew for 20 years, and I did end up writing her major biography on her, but her passing kind of clicked with me that these people need to be acknowledged as quickly as possible. Not everybody was a great dramatic actress like Patricia Neal. Certainly Hedy Lamarr was not known to be a great dramatic actress, and when I talk about Hedy Lamarr, I'll tell you why I wrote her. But Patricia Neal and women of that era and men of that era are quickly leaving us, and it's so very important that we know who they were, what they did, and why they are important. A couple of years ago, Margaret O'Brien, a former child star, Margaret O'Brien and I spoke at Brandeis University. Brandeis students, film students, are very fortunate in that they have a wonderful film department there, which was largely endowed by Lew Wasserman upon his passing in Hollywood. So these children have wonderful facilities and wonderful things at their disposal. I call them children. They're young adults, excuse me, but at any rate, I didn't call them children, but I remember speaking in front of them, and Margaret and I were talking later. Her talk was basically the same thing, about how very important it was for them to know who came before them, to study what came before them, and how these doors were open for them to do what they want to do. So I've always been a film buff. I've always loved motion pictures. My history in film, I started reading biographies, adult biographies, when I was still a very young child. And I remember in the 1960s when Ecstasy and Me came out, Valley of the Dolls came out, Peyton Place, I think the decade before, came out. These are all scandalous books, which are really tame now. But I remember reading those books, not so much to be excited and titillated, but basically to learn how to write dialogue. And my mentors, if you will, are people who wrote books on film, people like James Robert Parrish, Leonard Maltin, who's actually a contemporary of mine, and several others that I could go on and talk about. But these people influenced me in that I read about Hollywood. I wanted to know about Hollywood because of its importance on our society. I was asked recently why I chose to write a book on Patricia Neal, and I thought largely her career had been overlooked. She had, of course, an interruption in her career when she had her strokes in the 1960s. But a lot of the younger generation then had quickly forgotten her, except for some television appearances, The Homecoming, of course, and some other film appearances. But she is, as many of my generation and older will testify, on film, she is one of America's great dramatic actresses. Why Hedy Lamarr? Well, it's fairly obvious. She was indeed the most beautiful girl in the world, and that's debatable. Some people think Garbo was, but I don't know. I'm rather prejudiced. I didn't know if I was going to like Hedy Lamarr when I began my research. This was a very complicated woman, and I saw the beauty, of course, in her films, and I thought, well, there's quite a legacy here of her film work. I mean, even some films that aren't very good, you can actually watch them and your eyes never leave her. I'll tell you a little bit about Hedy Lamarr. She was born of Jewish parents in Vienna in 1914, an only child of privilege. Her father was a major banker in Vienna. She was raised, however, Catholic. Her mother was Catholic by choice, which was not unusual. Vienna was largely a Catholic city in the 19-teens and 20s. She wanted always to be an actress, and so at an early age she made up her mind to study drama, And she went to the school at Schönberg, where Max Reinhardt had a dramatic studio, and was quickly cast in some plays, also in Berlin. He actually said, while directing a play, just casually mentioned young Hedy Kiesler as being perhaps the most beautiful girl in the world. And within 48 hours, that shot across Europe via telegraph that Hedy Kiesler by Herr Max Reinhardt called her the most beautiful girl in the world. So everybody wanted to see this young actress who did 3 or 4 small films in her native Austria before being offered a starring role with her at that time lover, I.mov, a movie to be shot in Czechoslovakia called Ekstaz, or Ecstasy. The director of that particular film was Gustav, now I've completely lost track of his name, but Makati, of course. Gustav Makati was the director of that film, and he was very well respected in Czechoslovakia. And when Hedy shot that movie, they knew immediately that it was going to be an important film, although there was very, very, very little dialogue. There were 2 particular scenes in that movie. Now, we all chuckle about that. They show this movie on Turner Classic Movies during prime time. Children actually watch it. But in those days, especially in Europe, it didn't cause much of a ripple. The 2 particular scenes in that film, which later caused quite a sensation here in the United States. Hedy did have a nude scene, a very brief nude scene, where she had to run nude into a lake and swim au naturel. Nothing bad about that. However, the one scene that did cause a bit of controversy was a film where she simulated having a physical relationship with I.mov, who was indeed her lover at that time. The film was reviewed in Europe and was an instant success, a major hit. It was reviewed in London as well, and not anything in those reviews spoke of those 2 particular scenes. They did talk about the cinematography, they talked about the direction, they talked about the beautiful Hedy Kiesler. But in 1935, when they tried to release it here in the United States, it was instantly banned. It was considered pornographic, and of course it was a huge success when they finally snuck it through customs. But that was our prurient attitude here in the United States at that time, and of course in 1934 we did have quite a moral ban on certain things that could and could not be shown in motion pictures.